What is going on? People, humans, bipodal humanoids. How many things can I think of? There's only three. I think that's about all I got. Tired. I am tired. I had a late 2 nights. I am suffering. I'm in the red as far as my performance is going. I am dragging myself along, but I thought, why not do this thing that I prepared, this regular weekly food for thought, number 18, coming at you live from a closet. I'm just kidding. I'm in my office, but it's basically a closet. Isn't any room a closet if you store things in it? Or does a closet mean you have to have clothes in it? I don't know. What's the definition of a closet? I'm not going to look it up. I'm just going to leave it the way that I left it. I feel good about it. I feel good that a closet can be anything, just a room, just like anything else. Harry Potter lived in under the stairs, which would look like a closet. So maybe a closet is a room. I don't know. Anyways, way too long. A little bit tired, trying to piece it all together. Man, I don't know. Like, there's this thing that I've always grappled with. I've struggled with this concept of carefully crafting this persona, like myself. Not that it's like hugely crafted, but it's one of those things where I speak my mind, like being fearless. I'm not afraid to say what I want to say. But there's a bit of a catch-22 to that, It's one of those things that I've had to work on over time. And even to this day, I still find that there's a bit of a struggle in that. There's times where I want to say something, but I hold back. I'll want to articulate, or I'll notice a thing and I want to reach out, but then I just kind of stop, and it kind of perplexes me as to why I would stop. One of the examples was as I was walking to work, doing this thing where my normal routine, as I walked along, saw a boy in a coffee shop, young child in school in the area. And he was obviously upset and crying in the sort of this weird window situation. Like almost like, how much is that doggy in the window? It was really weird. Anyways, he's crying. He's kind of emotional. He's got his thing going on. He's probably no older than my youngest son. And I assess it and I go, shit, I wonder what's wrong with that kid. And really rapid thoughts. Then I kind of immediately look to his right, and I can see that there's another coffee cup there. So I'm immediately assuming that I kind of catch in my periphery an adult walking back. And the problem is that my gut told me do a thing, but then I assessed it and went, well, it's probably not a thing I want to get involved in as such. And then there must be his dad, and maybe he's just in trouble. But then, you kind of flip the switch, my mind flips the other way. And I'm like, what if that kid's in trouble? Like literal trouble with some sort of asshole. What's going on? And, you kind of spin the other way. And it makes me, made me feel as though I should turn around and go back and just give him a thumbs up, see if he's all right. But then it's this interference thing. Then it's this whole, like, is it my place? There's all this fucking drama about doing something like that, and, just getting the finger in me called a pedophile for, like, giving a shit. Anyway, that's complex. That's like a thing, and there was another thing that was kind of similar, and I wanted, but it shits me, it bugs me that I don't just do a thing, and, but maybe it's my gut, protecting me, maybe whatever it is, but, I don't like it. I feel guilty that I held back and I didn't do it, and I just don't know why, you can get an overwhelming feeling to not do that, and just to ask if they're okay, and it's not just with kids. It's just, it's not with, just adults. It's kind of an all around thing, or if it's the opposite, if someone needs help, or just to then say to somebody else, I just don't even like what you're doing. What are you doing? I tend to do that one more often, but it's a funny thing. It's like this weird thing where we hold back. And the reason I guess it's like this thing I'm grappling with all this is because, the reason that I bring it up is because, in Australia recently, we've had some pretty weird news. And, when I was preparing this, there was 2 bits, but now there's 3 bits of weird news. It's all very mental healthy in a way, or where people are at in this sort of mental health journey. But one of the pieces that I'll talk about first was about a teenage boy on a train. He was sitting there, and there's video footage on the internet, which doesn't make it great. But anyway, he's sitting there, and the run of the story, I've seen a few different angles on it. And the crux of this is, as a teenage boy, big kid, sitting on a train, cursing, kind of just carrying on probably about something. And then, there's some pensioners, old age people sitting in the seat in front of him, just turn around and ask him if he could stop cursing, as impolite. And his immediate reaction is to stand up and tower in a real dominant, aggressive posture over the top of these people and start, kind of having a bit of a crack at these old people. Now, these old people didn't know what to do, and obviously they didn't do anything. But like within, I would say, seconds, all of a sudden, this another gentleman comes down, and he must have been eyeballing the situation. Comes up and he literally stands up next to this kid. And he's not that he's much bigger or anything, but proceeds to immediately strangle the kid by the neck. And then the kid's standing there being strangled by this guy, and the guy's getting all aggressive up in this kid's face. And, and he pushes this kid back down. And whilst this is happening, another even larger fellow comes up to, stand over the top of him. And then they proceed. The kid kind of holds his ground in the sense of like, he's released and then he sits down, and this really weird, sort of what do we do next moment takes place in what you watch in this video. Now, I'm analyzing a video. I wasn't there. I don't know what's up. There's so many choices that could have been made in this situation, right? There's so many parts to the puzzle that, perplex me when you see these things, and I've been in the wild where these things go down, and always ask the question, what would you do? What will happen? How do you participate, or do you participate? And a lot of choices were made in that particular scenario, I mean, you can really break this down, why did the guy proceed to choke this kid? And I get it. It was a threatening situation and whatnot, but the choice to interact with violence, it's a pretty dangerous gambit. What is the flow and effect from that decision on this kid getting now basically, being reaffirmed that acting this way is the normal way to do it, and that you just stand, do this sort of a thing. An aggressive thing, response with aggressive response, it just never really has the right long-term effect. The kid may think twice, sure, but this sort of aggression, was pretty hectic, right? And the kid was wrong, obviously. But are there other ways to deal with it? The why of it is the perplexing part. What is wrong with this kid for him to believe that that is the appropriate response to any situation? Already has red flags all over it, and then to have these other adults come up and immediately assault the kid, which, choking someone is a level of assault, immediately is another red flag. Why is that the immediate response? Why is there not another way to do it? And in that scenario, they didn't necessarily hold back. But then the question is that the why for why people do hold back? Is it the fact that, now this is a thing? I don't know what the fallout of all of this is. I don't know what happened to the kid, and I don't know what happened to the other adults in the situation. I don't really know where it all went from there. It's all just the news, and everybody has a fundamental sort of juxtaposing side to this. And I think the middle ground is that, you can really boil this down to some simple truths. The kid obviously isn't in a good space. The adult that went after him is in a good space because he decided to be very aggressive about it. Both very aggressive, obviously not having a great day or life or whatever. What's the deal, people? And that then creates this weird gap in like how, you engage in society. There isn't safe space oftentimes. And that's a really like physical, aggressive one. But then the other one that came up recently was, we've been inundated, or we had been over the Christmas holiday, inundated with fires. And it was a stressful time for a lot of people. People were stopping work and volunteering to go and save properties to help their local communities. It was intense. And I don't, know, other than living in southern Florida and constantly watching and waiting for, hurricanes and tropical storms to hit, this is by far worse in the sense that every day we were wondering if we were going to catch on fire and if our houses were going to burn down. And not so much in Sydney CBD, which would be like, apocalyptic, but, it was everywhere. It was, all around us. And, if you were to drive an hour in any direction, away from Sydney, you were going to go to basically be in a fire or be in closed road or be turned around and sent home. It was a pretty nuts thing. So a lot of people were getting involved in taking care of the fires and managing it and working. And this other, news piece that came through was about this volunteer firefighter that, drove his fire truck up to the news, asked if they were the news, and then basically told the PM of Australia to get fucked, and kind of, basically showcased a level of mental stress, a level of trauma, mental trauma from the work he'd been doing. Had a real rip about how he, got better things to do, than just, sit there and save house after house after house and under such duress. And he was obviously lost his mind. But it basically ended with him saying, "Come on down here and I'll basically, kick your ass," kind of an attitude. And it was a very, typical male, pissed off, rundown about, just the shit, right? Is very ego driven and emotionally driven male kind of thing. Now, look, this guy spoke his mind, legit spoke his mind on national television. He had a crack, and he was He was a mess. You know, there's footage of him doing this, and then basically parking his car, and then they kind of catch back up with him. He's laying on the ground. He's completely run down. Guy's probably been working God knows how many hours over and over, day in, day out. He was a mess, you know, and the subsequent fallout from his decision to do this was he was fired from the volunteer fire services after however long it was that he'd been working for that and doing that. They let him go from a volunteer organization. And, you know, it's just insane that, you know, that the fallout, and there's no way to correlate whether these things happened as a result of one or the other, but they kind of said that that behavior went against the code, like the kind of the practice. So, you know, he was let go for those, you know, that behavior. You know, I find it insane that if you you can speak your mind. I mean, now the caveat here for those that don't know the local details is the PM of Australia was on holidays in Hawaii during the bushfires for a portion of it. He had to call it short and come home, which was effectively he just stayed away until his holiday was up and came back to Australia. You know, it was a horrible look for him. He was not in a good spot, and who knows why all these things play out. But the fact that someone, you know, was, you know, obviously not having a good day and spoke their mind and then lost their, you know, volunteer job or their job, you know, I don't know what else happened with them, but you know, for speaking their mind. I mean, geez, you know, what can you do these days? You can't say much, right? So again, going back to what I opened with, you know, why don't we say what we mean? You know, there's an example of saying what you mean and losing, you know, your job or losing what you were, you know, basically volunteering to do. You know, it's a crazy situation. The weird part about this whole thing is that this guy in his hometown at his local pub have people from the local community all the way to people, you know, in other countries putting money down on the bar so the guy never has to drink again. So much to say, so much money that the owner of the pub has said that he'll probably never pay for a drink again in his life. You know, so for the fact that the people backed it's an interesting thing. You know, we all agree that being able to say what you mean is important, you know, to a certain degree, but then when the system gets involved in it or when it bucks up against the system, it's not okay. You know, and there's these weird ways at which we're augmenting, you know, the system. The system is becoming this pressure cooker of, you know, being what is it? Offended. You cannot, you know, people live in this world of the disease of being offended. You know, nothing, you know, I saw this great comedy, but nothing happens when you get offended. You don't get anything, nothing. You're just offended. You know, sticks and stones, right? Has disappeared. Like you're now in a world where you lead with the front foot of being offended or upset about things, and that everything must change and recalibrate in order to remove the offense. And I mean, I get it, you can be offended, but we've been offended our entire lives. Everything can be offensive. You know, the smell of a fart is offensive, right? But it doesn't mean that, you know, we should ban farting full stop. I mean, it'd go against everything, right? Things can be described as offensive, and I get that I'm simplifying offense, but at the end of the day, you know, you will be offended throughout your entire adult life and your childhood. What the hell's going on? You know. So, anyways, look, I'm rambling a little bit here. So, I mean, you know, the third one, I guess I'm going to slip in here is that there's a recent, and this is a touchy one from, you know, like the mental health and, you know, sort of thing. But it's a domestic violence thing where a man lost it and lit his wife and children on fire in a car. And then killed himself. And from what I've read, he stabbed himself to death. So it was murder-suicide situation, and it had to do with domestic violence, which is just horrendous. But it begs a question like how do you get to that? And I try to venture out in my mind, empathetically as to how that could unfold, and I can't even begin to imagine the complexities of the things that were going on in order for one's mind to go there. But again, the mental health of it. How do you reach out? How do you say the things that you want to say? How do you get the help that you need to get? All these things just become this clusterfuck of shit, which really is one of my favorite phrases. And you just have to somehow battle through. You like left alone or whatever it is. You then get to the point where these things are inside of you, and then you let them out. Such as is the case with the firemen. Or you're so bound up as a kid that you're cursing on a train because you're doing whatever you're doing and someone tells you to cry, and then you expel this anger outwards toward old people, which I guarantee you the kid probably knew was totally fucked what he was doing, but he was probably felt out of control. and then he was choked for. I mean, like it just is nuts that we live in a society that's almost in this pressure cooker moment, right? Where we're always holding back so much, but by the time we get to a point where we can't hold back anymore, it becomes this like vomiting of just shitty behavior and really rough, horrible stuff that can be either, misconstrued or misunderstood or, offensive or, it's all these things. And again, people fuck up. We're going to fuck up. Every life is just a series of mess ups, right? But what now, the society we now live in is just constructed to be precious, and now we're, basically living in a world where the internet's neutered our collective ability to speak our minds. Everything can be recorded. We are now stuck where, the words that hang off of your tongue are the things that you're known for, even if they're misconstrued. All it takes is a cohort of people to misconstrue what you say, and all of a sudden you're the devil. Be living a world of being offensive, has now torn us into these little, I guess, safe little thinkers, actors, fakers, and that's kind of a sad place to be. That's, I think, why I held back, in some of these situations, because I was more concerned of the potential reputational damage. Gosh, that took me a second. That might incur, and I don't care. I don't give a fuck necessarily. But what I don't want is all the drama for actually giving a shit, which is the saddest part about it. You can give a complete and utter care for somebody, give a fuck completely, and then be raked over the coals for doing something. So I don't know if there's an answer to this. It's just this weird thing that rumbled through my head this last week. And it's kind of an odd thing. I don't know if there's anything that we can do about this anymore, other than to be kind, to lead with compassion, to have an honest approach to, reaching out to people. But maybe, it's a combination of also asking for that help early. This is mental. I mean, really, if you boil down the mental health of this, it is about asking for help early. It is about, being able to go to someone. It doesn't answer all questions, and I'm oversimplifying and what have you, but there are outlets for all of us to not be stuck in a pressure cooker of an emotional roller coaster, to feel like we need to explode to express ourselves. There must be a better way. And, perhaps there isn't an answer today, but there are answers for everyone out there. So that's it. That's what I'm talking about. That's the thing. I hope it wasn't too mind-boggling or mind-numbing. Well, maybe that's just my own concern. But that's sort of the food for thought. Say what you mean. See if you can get away with it. See if you can push it out. See if you can reach out and say the stuff that's in your head. Don't build a pressure cooker. Hope you guys are having a good one. Good day, evening, month, year, life, whatever it is you need. I hope it's happening. Cheers, everybody. Bye.